For months, the group searched for Sophia. It seemed inevitable that hope would eventually lead to her being found. How when those barn doors opened, that group would never be the same again when that little girl stepped out that barn. Everything changed in that instant, and here is why. Before we get into how Sophia stepping out the barn at an inconvenient moment changed everything, we need to set the scene. At the start of season 2, the group are looking for a new settlement. This settlement, it would be somewhere that they could call home. But in the midst of getting to that settlement, they need resources. They scavenge cars on the highway, and that's where the problems start. As a herd of walkers enter the highway, they notice that they're going to be in a little bit of trouble. All of them decide to hide into cars or under cars in order to avoid being spotted by the walkers and potentially eaten. That includes the kids. Sophia was separated from Carol, but Sophia was wigging out. This led the walkers to a location and led her into some deep trouble. This is where Rick stepped in, grabbed her and took her into the woods and put her into a safe spot where if she'd have stayed there, she might have been alive. However, when Rick returned to that spot to find her hopefully and take her back to Carol, she wasn't there. The group looked for weeks, including a Daryl Dixon self-mission and also Rick and several others looking for her all the way out through this series. That seemed to be the mission, to find Carol's daughter. However, things didn't go to plan as hope was starting to dwindle and Hershel was getting impatient about them staying on the farm. This is where Shane takes things into his own hands. And when he's unhappy with his own position in the group, and he's unhappy with the fact that Hershel wants him off the land, he notices a problem on the land anyways that is potentially a risk to them all on this land. And that is the walkers in the barn, which Glenn found out and chose to tell the group because this was a health risk to everyone. Shane forces his way inside and this would be the moment that the secret would be revealed. When Shane forces his way into the barn with the crowbar and then shoots Hershel's family, friends, neighbours, along with the rest of the group, it seemed inevitable that Hershel was going to kick them off the land. We weren't even thinking about Sophia. We had stopped thinking about Sophia. The hope was starting to dwindle anyways, and this was the moment where we're thinking that this show is going into a different direction. However, when the brief pause in Hershel's family crying and grieving for their loved ones, there's a pause and there's a shadow. That shadow is Sophia's shadow, and when she walks out that barn, oh my god, that changes everything as Carol sobs, cries, and so does the rest of the group, realizing all hope was now lost. The aftermath of Sophia's death was huge and would affect The Walking Dead forever, as Carol was the one that changed the most. Obviously her daughter just died, and she was seen in season 1 and 2 as vulnerable. She was now a mother on her own, and she also suffered with the fact that she was abused. So she was quite vulnerable in that sense. She wasn't somebody who had any defense mechanisms and was somebody who wasn't in a world where she was comfortable anymore. And she knew that after she saw Sophia's death, that she needed to get stronger. She needed to learn what the art of survival was. And throughout the upcoming series, as after season 2, she learned what she had to do. She became stronger. She became a leader. She did things in the art of surviving and became somebody that the group could lean on for guidance at times. And she forged a great relationship with Daryl in that sense too, learning her the ropes and becoming somebody that the group would trust for many, many years, and became somebody for the group to rely on in some of the toughest times, as she would do stuff that, let's be honest, some of the others would not do. But let's be honest, Carol wasn't the only one affected by the aftermath of Sophia's death, as Shane was now on the tightrope after killing all Hershel's family and friends, and Hershel knew it and Rick knew it now, that the Shane situation was becoming untenable and that eventually he would have to either put Shane down or tell him to leave, as he was becoming unmanageable and became a situation that seemed to be, there was no resolution for this ever calming down. But finally, the last one that really was affected by the Sophia death was obviously Rick, because Rick obviously lost her in the woods and led to her disappearance really in the get-go. However, when she walked out of the barn, he was the first one that took control of the situation and realised nobody else was strong enough in that moment to put the bullet in a young girl's head, even if she was dead. And that was the moment where I think a lot of people realised that he knew the art of what it was like to survive, and he knew what it takes to survive. And a lot of them started to see him as a leader and would do things that honestly nobody else would have been able to do or stomach. And he took that on the chin, and he took that, even though he didn't enjoy doing it, he knew that he had to do it for the safety of the group. And by taking it into his own hands, that showed that he would eventually become a leader, and that would eventually lead into the Rick in season 3. This was really the first brick on the wall that really led to him becoming Ruthless Rick in season 3, because obviously that led him down a dark path to realise that obviously Shane obviously had to be dealt with, and that led to the Ruthless Rick situation. But this was the first brick in that wall. If you enjoy breaking down the exact moments where franchises, series has changed for either the better, for the worse, then don't forget to subscribe, as this is Everything Changed, and you want to be alerted to our next episode. Sophia's death marked the day that the innocence of the Walking Dead had truly gone. All hope had been lost, and now it weren't about hope, it was about the art of survival. This was the moment where several key characters changed on the spot and became stronger. The show actually became more about survival than anything else. This was a moment that changed everything, and probably for the better.